Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. My day job is running Did It, an 83-person digital first ad agency that's made 11 acquisitions to become full service. I also run a cause marketing nonprofit called Giving Forward that generates revenue for nonprofits using a variety of cause marketing methodologies. I'm joined today by Jim Sterne, who has a bunch of different roles listed in his LinkedIn, but I think the common thread across all of his activities and roles is really analytics and measurement. I would say probably yourself and Avinash are like the two godfathers of analytics, and you may have him beat out in that because I think you've created more content and been involved in more associations than he has, although it's a pretty close race. So I'd love for you to give your own self intro because you've been up to so much between running events and creating content and being involved in associations. So thanks so much for joining me, Jim.
Thank you for having me. This is terrific. Let's see, self-introduction goes, tripped over the internet in 1993 and started writing books and doing public speaking and consulting then. At the end of the 90s, tripped over web analytics and went, oh, it's not just my opinion. We can measure how ugly your website is. Put on a conference in 2002 that the audience created the Digital Analytics Association in 2004. And my conference, now named Marketing Analytics Summit, has been running ever since, although virtually for the last 2 years. In addition, I like writing books, so the latest on artificial intelligence and machine learning in marketing. And I help individuals with mentoring their career, and I help small agencies such as yours double in size and revenue.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me. You've had a chance probably to talk to hundreds of marketers over the years, maybe thousands. And you've probably been able to see firsthand what mistakes they're making as it relates to measurement and analytics. So I'd love you to sort of explain or share with everybody the mistakes that junior level people make and how those contrast with sort of senior level marketers with regards to mistakes they make in the way they think about measurement and analytics.
First of all, they think of it as measurement. Well, just tell me, how many people came to our website? Well, let me explain for about 4 hours how we don't really know. It's like I can give you a number that with a margin of error of 5%, and I can be 20% confident that I'm hitting the number really well. And I just lost my audience. Nobody wants to hear that. Just tell me how many people saw my ad. How many people are searching for that search term? It's, well, it's roughly this, it's sort of that, it's kind of this. You can't tell me exactly? No, get over it. So that's the first mistake. It's not accounting. It's statistics. It's likelihood and probability. And once you embrace that, and then you move it over into the analysis, which is, well, what do these probabilities and likelihoods suggest? And that's where the analyst comes in. It's not just let's capture the data and clean it up and throw it in a spreadsheet and make a pie chart out of it. It's let's think about what these numbers actually mean and how they can help us. And by the way, what business problem are you trying to solve by asking me that question? Oh, well, now we've got a senior analyst.
Right. And then once you move up into the C-suite, right, obviously it's not always explained to them that it's essentially the much of the data they're looking at is not accounting level, right, but is in fact, it's not a census, it's samples that are used to create this information. So, what mistakes are they making at the senior level, other than perhaps not necessarily knowing the origin of the data?
It's the same mistake. They're looking for a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement for marketing. So mistake number one, marketing doesn't do that. Marketing is about psychology and changing hearts and minds and affinity and loyalty, and that these numbers are messy regardless. And then there is no standard output. Just give me the chart. Just give me the graph. Just give me the dashboard. Well, okay, fine. Here you are. I hope you find it useful. Is a bad relationship. Tell me what the corporate goals are this month. I mean, I don't need to read the annual report to say what our values are and we're trying to change the world. What's on your plate? what are you trying to solve for, C-suite, right now? Because I've got all of this data and some of it's going to be very useful. And if you explain to me the most important key performance indicator, I can go find out a whole bunch of stuff that will be valuable. And then I can find a bunch of stuff that might be valuable, and I can run tests on it. And I can come back and give you not advice, not even recommendations. I can give you information based on data that will be useful to exactly what you're trying to accomplish. If you just say, I'm going golfing next week and I want to tell the schmo I'm going to play with that my website gets more traffic than his, sure, here's a number, pick one. But if you want analysts to really help you, and oh, by the way, then you want to get them engaged in data science and machine learning, okay, now we just need a really good problem to chew on and let us do our job.
Yeah, one of the ways I've sometimes explained analytics to folks where they sort of want to know more about the future than they want to know about the past, but obviously analytics is historical data, is looking exclusively at analytics is like, and then basing the trajectory of your company or your marketing plan on it is like trying to drive by looking in the rearview mirror. It gives you some information, but it's hard to make big decisions based exclusively on that. Your AI book, which is the one you've done most recently, obviously, at a certain point, when you have good quality data, it can be predictive for the future, right? And AI and machine learning can help in that. So, when people start to think about, okay, can I use past data to predict, where I should steer the ship, where I should steer the car, where I should steer the company or the marketing plan? Now, how should they be thinking about that?
Well, that is what you use to make predictions. Otherwise, it's just, right, you hope. Yes, you use data from the past to do a variety of things. First of all, where were we? What happened? Can we relate that to things that we did back then? So we ran this campaign 6 months ago. Did the numbers change? We stopped running the campaign 3 months ago. Did the numbers change? So that's just looking backwards. Then we do predictive analytics, statistical analysis to run it forward to make predictions. And then there's the classic method of here is a year's worth of data. Let's take the first 9 months and build a model that says this is how this data behaves. This is what people are going to do. This is what sales are going to do. And then we let it run out the prediction for the next 3 months and compare that to the 3 actual months. And if they line up, hey, we've got a model that could be useful. And if it doesn't, okay, we're going to tweak the model for a while. Now, when you get machine learning involved, it can do that a lot faster. That's the joy of it. It does it faster, kind of full stop.
Right. One of the things that, once you move into the C-suite, CMO or VP level in some cases, they're looking to analytics to help them make budgeting decisions. Mm-hmm. And much of the data that we have the luxury of working with within Did It and that you're probably often delving into is paid advertising data. It may not be last click data, but it's certainly data that is as a result of marketing dollars that were spent on paid media. Now, once you start to move into earned media, right, PR, digital PR, content marketing, and SEO, things get fuzzier, right, with regards to cause and effect, and it becomes more difficult to predict ROI. So the senior level marketers who are deciding, how to slice up the budget pie often find themselves at a loss with regards to deciding, okay, what should my big picture earned media versus paid media budget be? I feel like I have a greater level of confidence in the cause and effect of my paid media allocation model, but on earned media, I don't feel like I have that confidence, yet I know it's important. So how should they think about that? How should they, make sure they're investing at the proper level on earned media in comparison to paid media?
This is where we have to come back down to the proxy numbers. How many impressions, how many likes, how many retweets, and it's we don't want to get that granular, but we have to have something to hold on to. So when we paid that agency that much money to run that campaign, it drove this much traffic to these unique landing pages. I would love to look at that and say it's absolute cause and effect, but it's like PR. I got mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. How much money was that worth? You can't measure that. But if you don't do it, you face not only some serious issues of losing brand vitality, but you lose face with the rest of the C-suite who likes opening up the Wall Street Journal and seeing the company named. They like seeing a billboard on the highway with the picture of the CEO. So some of that is vanity, and that's valid. It is a human psychological need, and don't think you can get away without it. But how much of your budget do you want to spend? And some of this can be tested, and it can only be tested absolutely at your peril. So, story of a large technology company, new CMO took over, and there was a giant argument about how much was spent on advertising and how much was spent in the sales department. And she said, tell you what, we're doing advertising regionally. We've got 10 regions in the United States. I'm going to turn off all advertising in 2 of those regions and show you the impact. And she did that for 3 months. The impact was sales went down 10% in those regions. And she proved it. And the company said, you lost 10% sales in those regions. You're fired. You can't win.
Well, at least she has a case study to show her next employer.
She does.
Yeah, I mean, geographic and longitudinal studies are my favorites, but there is always, obviously, if you really want to get the question answered, there's opportunity cost. And clearly in that case, opportunity cost was so great that I guess you probably should have let senior management know you're going to do the test and maybe find a way to do it where the impact was not as great. So the other thing that's sort of facing the industry at large at the moment is with the IDFA and the continued erosion of third-party cookie, a lot of the analytics data is becoming more and more sample data and less census data, right? So your degree of statistical confidence is going down. So you're losing the ability to target and you're losing the ability to track. So for those marketers who've become accustomed to, to feeling more and more confident about their analytics, and they may sort of end up having to lose some of that confidence, how do you get them over that hump and realizing, okay, the sample is probably going to be less accurate in the future as a result of this erosion of trackability?
The majority of my career was without any of this tracking stuff. So, the good old days, 3 television stations, 2 local newspapers, a billboard, sign on the bus. In order to get over the fact that you don't have as much data as you did before, you got to up your statistical game. It's still directional, it's useful, it's valuable, it's just not as good as it was. But it does raise the visibility and the important first-party data. So above all, you want to grow your email address database. That's where the gold is. So it goes back to being creative. What can you do? What value can you provide in exchange for somebody's email address? That's marketing. The more personal data that you can get out of somebody, the better you are at marketing. If you're depending on a third party, well, they are going to own you. And they're going to, Google says with the whole flock thing, Google says, hey, guess what? We're going to be first party data from now on. And so you have to buy your ads through us. Facebook says, you want to slice and dice? Yeah, we can slice and dice. We won't tell you who they are, but we can target people you're looking for. Can we retarget them? Well, sure. If they came to your website, you've got first party data. Congratulations. So we're kind of going back to principles, and people who are upset that their data isn't good enough are worrying a little bit too much about data and not enough business.
That's great advice. The other, obviously not all marketers have the luxury of big data, right? The bigger your data, the sort of more accurate your predictions will be, and once you start to move from the enterprise level into the medium-sized businesses and the small-sized business, you end up with the sort of data haves versus the data have-nots, both with regards to having big enough sample sizes to have statistical validity, or you just have to wait forever, at which point the data starts to get fuzzy, right? Because it came in over time. So if you happen not to be, have access to the $1 million a month budgets where, good data flows in almost on a daily basis, and you're sort of stuck working with smaller data sets, how do you advise those businesses? And sometimes they're actually big businesses, but they're just sort of in niches. When you sell MRI machines, they're not added to shopping carts, right? It's a longer sales cycle, and you don't sell that many every year. But you could just be a smaller business stuck with that same sort of data scarcity problem. How should they embrace analytics and knowing that they have smaller data sets?
There is a middle ground where it's kind of no man's land. If you have lots of data, that's great. If you have very little data, you can, I don't want to use the word federated data because that's Google has taken that word from us. But my favorite example is Shopify. Put up a store on Shopify. And if you can get 100 people a month to show up, then you can compare their behavior on your website to 1 million other stores on Shopify. And Shopify's AI system will say, hey, we noticed the behavior of people on Facebook when this happens and that happens. And we recommend a $25 test to advertise to retarget people. Do you want to run this test? Yes or no? And it's a text. It comes to you on your phone. You don't have to be an analyst. You don't even have to be a marketing person. Their AI system says, this would be a good idea. Do you want to invest $25? Yes. And then a week later, here's the result. You want to make that $5? Yes. That's leveraging artificial intelligence and data, even though you don't have much. But if you're selling MRI machines, you are in a world where you know who your audience is. You're not advertising on TV. You know them by name if you're good, and you invest in STEM instead of advertising.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting that while we're losing some fidelity and targeting in some portions of the online world, within the offline world, direct mail still has amazing fidelity in both B2B and B2C. That's one of the reasons we got into the direct mail business that did it, was that, the lists still exist.
They do, and mail is more powerful now because, you remember 10 years ago, the mailbox was full every day. And now it's like, oh, I've got 7 pieces to look at and I see all of them instead of just throwing out, oh, here's a half a pound of trash.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that during the pandemic, for those of our clients who continued to mail during the pandemic, was that the behavior around receiving mail changed dramatically. From I get home at 8 o'clock at night and it's just this big pile and most of it goes directly in the garbage, to I'm excited that the postal carrier has arrived because they might have something from Amazon for me today. And oh, by the way, there's a few other pieces of mail. I guess I'll look at them, right?
I have a 300-foot walk, 100 meters to get to my mailbox at the bottom of the driveway. It's like, oh, it's lunchtime. I get to go outside.
Right.
Get the mail.
Yeah. So, it's still interesting and fascinating to be testing B2B mailings, right? Because some people are working from home. And so B2B mailers have to be a little more creative than they might have been previously. At least now, most people are stopping by the office, but now that same pile of mail negative that used to exist in the home mail when people came home from work is existing in a B2B, office-based environment. So it'll be interesting to see how B2B mailers, adapt to
I have to tell you, my first exposure to analytics or measurement or of marketing of any kind was direct mail. It was in the early 1980s, selling enterprise software. We designed 2 postcards. We sent out 10,000 of A, 10,000 of B, saw which one got the best result, and then the other 8,000 got the winner. And when I first heard about this, I thought, what? That's just so obvious. How come everybody isn't always doing that? and I became a convert right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, now with much of the direct mail being essentially programmatic in that you can hyper personalize every piece, it's not done on a lithographic press, as much anymore. What the same power we have with dynamic creative optimization of banners can be now applied to direct mail. So we expect to see some interesting innovation in that category.
We are, however, seeing dear first name has replaced occupant.
Yes, indeed. Well, the human is still the one area of error that can happen in pretty much any form of marketing. But do you anticipate, you've got the book behind you about AI in marketing. Should marketers be fearful, right, that they'll be replaced by the AI?
Should marketers be fearful that their word processing system has replaced them? No. That replaced secretaries, yes. But AI is a tool. It is not a solution. And it is a tool for very narrow, specific problems. So a good marketer is responsible for 100 different tasks and spell checking of them. Oh, good, we've automated that. Thanks. Sorting out and doing lead ranking. Which one should go to the sales department and which should be just put them on the nurture list? Oh, look, AI can help with that. It's a tool to help me do my job, but it can't do the whole job. And there's the intuition psychology part of it that is not going to get resolved in my lifetime. So I'm not worrying about it.
Absolutely. Well, marketing is right message, right time, right audience, right? And the message side, I think, is the area where the human is at least for the time being, much less replaceable. In that you need to really think about what your right message.
Example is if your list is big enough, and you can send out, if you have 20 million email addresses of people who've opted, congratulations. And then you can build the machine to say, look, here's the language that you can, here are the keywords you can use. And you've got grammar, so you can figure out how to create sentences. Here are 100 pictures to choose from. Go ahead and mix up and sort, match, and slice and dice, send a bunch of stuff out and see which micro segments respond to which messages and which pictures, and then send everybody else in that micro target the same thing. AI can do that, and it can be very useful. I just don't know how many people have that many email addresses in their database. So for MRIs, I'm much better off handwriting a letter and hand addressing the envelope and putting a stamp on it because, wow, that's a standout. I will open that. Yep,
exactly. Different forms of marketing for different to solve different marketing problems. So what are you excited about for the next year or two? Is there anything going on either within analytics or within platforms or within targeting that you're super jazzed about?
What am I super jazzed about? Well, I'm hopeful, I guess. I'm jazzed that a great deal of the analytics world is focused on data quality because it's the old joke that the data scientist spends 80% of its time cleaning data and 5% of the time doing analysis and 15% of the time complaining about the 80%. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get some tools that will help with that. I'm seeing companies taking a step forward to get a hold of the data collection and transportation and manipulation process so that be speeded up a little bit. And I am hopeful that and excited that people who started doing this 20 years ago are now in the C-suite. People who came to my conference in 2002 and all the way through 2010 are senior level people. They're running companies. They're chief analytics officers. They're steeped in this stuff and they get it. It's no longer, well, in some of these places, it's no longer the uphill battle of explaining to everybody every day what I do for a living. They actually understand and provide enough resources. Technically, what I'm finding interesting is small companies, startups that are building systems that can take advantage of whatever data you have. They're building models and they're building processes where, just point me at your web analytics and your CRM system and your HubSpot system, and I'll bring it all in and start cranking out predictions that you can look at and decide if you think they make sense and want to take action on. And then if it looks like this is all working, hook it up to your automated system to send out those emails, to bid up those search terms, and to send out that direct mail.
Right. Do you think, has it become easier for enterprises to break down the data silos? Because sometimes the data that's necessary exists in different silos.
Yeah, that started out as a technical problem, and it has ended up a political problem. There is still a strong belief that knowledge is power, and as long as I have the knowledge and I keep you away from it, I have the power, and that is exactly backwards. If we can take all the data and munge it together, first of all, congratulations, that's a big ask. But if we can, all good things come from that. But that's just true of, it's a human endeavor. It would be great if everybody understood what everybody else in the company does and we could all work together going in the same direction. And if you're a company of 100 people, you can do that. And if you're a company of 10,000 people, forget it.
It doesn't sound like you think there's a magic bullet of an evangelist who can break down those political silos.
No, these are problems we've been having for decades.
Right.
The business books that have been written about the problem of getting everybody to work together fill a library.
Right. And the spines have never been cracked. So apparently, we're not going to see a result anytime soon in that area. Yeah. Well, it was great catching up with you, Jim. I look forward to continuing to read your stuff and
thank you.
Watch the evolution of marketing and analytics as the data gets cleaner and better and AI starts to dig into it.
Thank you, Kevin. It has been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.